Welcome, friends, to With All Your Heart podcast. I am your host, author and speaker Bob Allen Kroll. Now available is my book, The Father Wound and Beyond, Confronting and Healing the Greatest Wound of All. Also available is the free download, The 9 Most Powerful Things a Catholic Father Can Do for His Children. You can find both at www.withallyourheart.org. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and enjoy the show. Welcome, gentlemen, to the With All Your Heart podcast. My name is Bob Allen Kroll, and today in the house, in the studio, we have my son, my oldest son, Kyle Robert Kroll. Kyle, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tonight is the big Packer game against the 49ers. The Packers beat the Dallas Cowboys last weekend, Kyle, in a shocking upset. I had no idea that would happen. I didn't think it was possible. So now all of our hopes are up. Are they going to be dashed?
Yeah, that's how it usually works with the Packers. If they're not doing good, they go downhill, and then you start really not getting into it, not caring so much. But
right.
Then they give you a little bit of success enough to care, and then just let you down.
And
again.
dash your hopes, yes. A stab in the heart. So, yes, well, anyway, we still love the Packers. Kyle, you've been to the Packers stadium a few times, right?
Yeah, most recent one was with my friend Travis, and that was Aaron Rodgers' last game, and he kind of, as you like to say, stunk up the field.
Yes, he did.
3 interceptions, and we missed the playoffs because of that.
Yeah, well, guess what? Aaron Rodgers, we still love you.
I know you're a regular listener, so sorry for saying that.
Yeah, so Aaron, just put something in the comments, and we still love you. But we had a great run with you, and now we've got Jordan Love, number 10, J Love.
Air Jordan Love.
Air Jordan Love.
They call him.
Yeah, he's and for all you guys who are Packer fans out there, thank you. Thumbs up for you guys, because there's Packer fans all over the world.
And if you're not, that's okay.
Yeah, nobody's perfect. There we go. Hey, yeah. Like father, like son, right?
Okay. That's where I got that from.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we love the Packers because over here in Wisconsin, the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay is a small town, a small city, I suppose, and there's not much else for us to do around here.
A lot of people that are like free agents or something like that are thinking about going to the Packers, or people that are trying to trash talk the Packers. They always say that, I guess, apparently. It's like, I don't want to go to Green Bay. There's nothing to do there.
Yeah, well.
And it's cold.
It's cold, and there's a lot of snow. So Kyle, a few years ago, went viral on a video that he did, The Mad Snow Shoveler, I guess. Is that
that's something like that on the title?
Yeah, so maybe some of you have seen it. Maybe we'll put a clip up there on this podcast here, so you can maybe see that, and maybe it'll say, hey, I've seen that guy before. Well, guess what? That's my son. That's my son. I'm proud of him, man, because he's famous.
It did get like 7 million views.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Well, it started off, actually, I put that on Facebook, I'm in the Army Reserves, and like a couple days before I went to basic training, that's when I posted that video.
Yeah.
We got a big snowstorm early March, and I left for basic training on March 5th, so it was a really annoying time for everybody to have to shovel their sidewalks and driveways when it seems like we shouldn't be getting that much snow that late in the season.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I think it kind of popped off because of it related to a lot of people. And I was going to say it usually gets even more views year after year around this time because people are sick of shoveling snow.
Right. March is supposed to be the start of spring, and then here we get dumped on with snow. And that's why it goes viral like that. And the comments, some of the most common comments that I see are just people, tears coming out of their eyes because they're laughing so hard because of the ending of that video.
Or like an LOL, and then they tag their friend, like, this is so you.
Yeah, so should we tell people who haven't seen it what
Well-
the funny part on it? Well, the very ending.
Well, I just get mad. It's all an act. Sorry to ruin it for people that haven't seen it.
That's okay. They'll have to go see it now because
Well, I guess,
so what kind of happened here?
But I just act like I'm getting mad, shoveling, getting sick of it. Because I was. That wasn't really an act. But then I pretend to kick the snow and trip and fall on the ice. And I hit my head pretty bad, actually. I had a headache for the first couple of days of basic training. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that. But what you did is near the end of the video, you threw the shovel.
Yeah.
And then you kick the snow out of anger, like I'm
Right.
so sick of this snow. And then as you're walking back to the house, you kick the snow because you're angry, and you actually slip on ice underneath the snow.
Yeah. I did that on purpose, though. That part I did on purpose.
Hold it.
I don't know if you knew that.
That you slipped?
Yeah, I'm a good actor.
Okay. I thought that was all an act.
No.
Oh, great. Now you're telling because when you smacked your head on the ice
That
/
wasn't
cement.
on purpose.
Yeah, that looked hard. And that's where every time I see it, I still laugh.
Yeah. Well,
So
all those, I was just thinking about, I'm trying to help relate that video to your podcast. And maybe it's all these people that are commenting, like, that's so you. They're talking about all the anger issues that their friends have.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because of father wounds.
Father, are you saying my father wounding to you? Is that what I'm hearing here?
Pointing fingers, but I mean, I've only had one dad to give me father wounds.
What
so.
You've got a granddad, so maybe they're coming from him. I don't know. Okay.
Generational.
Well, I appreciate your honesty there, Kyle. So as most of you know, I wrote a book. Well, maybe you don't know this, but I wrote a book called The Father Wound and Beyond, Confronting and Healing the Greatest Wound of All, especially for Catholic men. And this book, I speak about my relationship with my dad, which wasn't so good all the time because I grew up in an alcoholic home. Dad drank a lot. Mom drank a lot. And there was a lot of emotional and physical and verbal abuse that me and my 8 other siblings had to deal with. I was the oldest of 9 kids. I had 3 brothers, 5 sisters, your uncles and aunts, Kyle. And a lot of that emotional pain got lodged deep down in my heart because of the abuse and the neglect that happened as a child. And then I took it into my adult years, and all of this garbage that had been accumulating over my childhood years started getting amplified into my marriage and into the relationship with my children. And sometimes I would just blow up at the smallest thing, just a triggering event, and I would just blow up in uncontrollable anger. And so not only the anger, but just the other jabs that I would provoke onto you or put onto you and your brothers, Kyle. And so that wounding continued. Like you said, this generational wounding that happens from father to son to his children and so on and so forth. Is that what you kind of see it as?
Yeah. And a question that just came to mind, just because I've never asked you this before, but you say something about your parents being alcoholics and stuff like that, and I've never really seen that in you. It's not like you won't drink, so you don't have like an inner vow never to drink. But did you ever have like any sort of vow not to do that or
Not to drink a lot?
Because
you
it
mean?
doesn't seem like it really has affected
Yeah.
you like to the negative one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever made that vow. For those of you that understand the vows that happen in our lives, you'll learn more about that as you listen to this podcast more. But we make inner vows. We make promises to ourselves as children, like, I will never drink like my mom and dad did. I will never get drunk like them. I will never hurt my children in anger because of my because of the alcohol level in my system that's causing all of this trauma and stuff to happen. So I don't think I've ever made that vow, Kyle. And I guess back when I was in college, like a lot of us who went to college, so there were episodes when we drank a lot, and there were a couple that happened to me, and the next day I'm like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And so I just never really got into alcoholism, and I don't think it was due to a vow. I just think I just felt like crap, and I don't want to feel like this anymore.
It's just interesting because most people, I feel like when they are exposed to as much alcoholism as you were from both parents,
Yeah.
at separate times though, right? or sometimes they overlap?
Yeah, they were overlapping, but there were separate times, yes.
Okay. Well, most people that experience that usually, to the degree that you did, seem to have one way or the other. They are also drunk all the time, being alcoholics, or they never touch a drink in their life.
Yep. And so your mother, my wife Christine, there was a time when she said that she was worried. This is back in our really younger years as being married, that she was always concerned that I would become an alcoholic because my parents drank a lot. And that just never materialized, and I'm grateful for that. And maybe there was a grace involved from God, but here we are, and you and I share a beer every now and then. We're going to have a beer or two tonight at the Packer.
That hasn't stopped you from keeping the generational alcoholism going just because it skipped you. You offer me a beer every time I come over.
Yeah, well, I noticed that you don't really drink all that much, right? Or should we not go there?
I'm just kidding.
Okay, yeah.
I have it under control.
Yeah, I know. You're not an alcoholic at all, Kyle. I know you good enough. But that's one thing I'm finding out as I do more inner healing with people. So inner healing ministry is something that I'm part of, something that I've done with you, Kyle, and with my son, Jason. The inner healing where we go back and find out where these inner vows, where these identity lies, these lies we believe about ourselves, the judgment lies that we make onto other people, how we judge others, and that gets lodged into our hearts as children. We make an identity lie like, my father doesn't love me, or I'm not a good person, or I can never be enough for my father. And we make that, we believe in this lie. The devil plants it there. And then there's the judgment lies that we make about others, like my father is an angry person. My father's a bad person. My father will never be a good person type of a thing. So we make these judgments, and that gets lodged in our hearts because the devil's tempting us to believe that too. Then we make the inner vows like, I will never be like my dad. That's one of the most common father inner vow that's ever made. I will never be like my father. Or I will never be good enough. I will always be a calm person and never angry, even though you should be angry in certain situations for righteous anger. So these inner vows start controlling our lives. So Kyle, you've been through the inner healing schooling that I've been through right here in our area.
Twice
We've got some, twice that I've been through.
Yeah,
and then
the first level of it.
Yeah, I went through levels 1 and 2 with Mark and Pat Preisner here in the Appleton, Wisconsin area, and they do a great job with training people to become inner healing ministers. And I'm talking not ministers as like a person who's a pastor or anything like that. I'm talking ministering to other people. And so you offer this inner healing prayer for others to help them through these difficult times. And you've got some training in that, Kyle, through this class that you and your wife Gina took just recently.
Yeah, the training's a little bit of like helping you learn what it's all about, but also integrating like how to do it for other people too.
Right. Yeah.
And I've not really done it with other people much, but me and Gina have done it a little bit here and there, and I think it's helped actually a decent amount because it's helpful to know that it's not really you that like has to worry about fixing the problem, because me, but also I think just guys in particular are fixers, especially with their wives. Well,
let me tell you, honey, let's see if we can, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but a lot of times it's hard to not be a fixer sometimes and just listen.
Right. Yep. So true. Well, before we go any further, Kyle, talk to us about Gina. Who's this Gina lady that you're talking about here?
Well, that's my wife. We got married in May, so it's almost 8 months, and it's been pretty good. We've just got a tiny little dog right now.
Yep.
That's a little ankle biter.
Yeah.
She convinced me to get, but as you can see, I'm a little bit of a hunter for those that are watching the video. But so that dog was kind of a trade-off. Like if I go hunting, she'll have somebody to keep her company.
Somebody.
Yeah.
So that little dog that you have, his name is Rowan.
Yeah,
And,
which we were sitting around the night we got him because we didn't name. He had a name, but we didn't want to keep that name. And we were thinking about a name, and we were looking up names on the internet, and we came across Rowan, which just sounded like him, but also she looked it up, and Rowan means little redhead, and he has like a maroon, burgundy, reddish kind of tint
Yep.
to his fur. So
Yeah.
that's the one we named him after.
Yeah. So Gina's a wonderful Catholic young lady and a wonderful daughter-in-law for me and a beautiful bride for Kyle. And when Kyle brought her over and introduced her to us, probably the second time that he came over with her, I said, Kyle, afterwards, I told him in private, I said, you have just found the pearl of great price. And that's...
Well, you clarified. You said a pearl of great price.
Yes, of course. We know the pearl of great price is heaven and Jesus and all that, right? But she is a pearl of great price. And just like my wife, Christine, your mother is a pearl of great price that I discovered. And so we have been definitely blessed, Kyle. Would you say that is true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I've told her this too, but one thing that I'll just start by saying when you said you were being around Mom more and developing like attraction towards her,
Yep.
what attracted you the most was obviously you're attracted to like looks and personality and things like that, but you said you were attracted to her holiness most of all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always heard you say that, and it was like it didn't really mean too much to me because I don't know, but it like started meaning more to me when I met Gina because that was like way more personal to me because that's what attracts me to her the most.
Yeah. Yeah. It is something how
to
that
me.
Yeah, that holiness is attractive. It draws you in. And just think about, you go to a beautiful church, these beautiful churches with the glass and the statues and the paintings and everything. And it's a blessed, sacred place in that. And that's what we see in the ladies that we've married, is that beautiful sacredness, that holiness that just draws a person in. And the devil tries to draw us in other ways as young men, before we're getting married. He draws us into other things that might seem attractive, but it's definitely twisted 180 degrees in the wrong direction, and it can bring us down the wrong path. Kyle, you mentioned about you and Gina, you both went into this healing class, and how has that affected your relationship with her?
So we did it last year with you and Mom, and then we did it this year with her parents, and we learned so much both years, stuff that you didn't catch on or catch quite, right away, because it's a lot to learn.
Right.
Because it's kind of a condensed class, even though it goes from late August to early December. But it's still a lot to take in. You take there's like 2 lessons every night.
Right.
And it's once a week. But it definitely provokes a lot of thought in both of us, and we have a lot of long discussions about it. But the benefit so far, we don't have kids to kind of see what we've learned as far as that goes.
Kids to wound. Whoops.
Yeah, exactly. But just in our own relationship and the relationship with our siblings, because she's got 5 brothers, and obviously I got my 3 brothers. The overall feeling or change that I've had is being way more empathetic towards people, because you know a lot of the stuff that triggers them and then in turn triggers you, because a lot of people, when somebody reacts in a sinful way, you tend to say, just forget them, I don't like them,
Right.
And then but it's easier to see them as a person that's hurting, and you have a lot more empathy towards them, and it's a lot easier. You see the world in such a way different way, because you see so many people that are just hurting, because you can kind of pinpoint, like if you know a little bit about the person, you can kind of guess at why they would be hurting the way that they are.
Right. And I think what we're learning is that people who have been wounded, especially as children, and we are all wounded. Every one of us is wounded. We have the original father wound from Adam, who didn't quite do his job in the garden, and so now the fatherhood wound is perpetuated upon all of us. But we, who have been wounded as children from our own parents and from others in our lives, we carry that stuff with us and take it out on other people. And so what you and Gina have done by taking this class to open your eyes to what is this emotional baggage that we carry, you have, through this class, recognized stuff, and it's improved your relationship, and it's going to improve it for years and decades to come because you are tackling these issues at a very young age. And it's like, this is really something that should be part of marriage classes, is finding all these root issues that we've been living with that have happened many, many years ago, and how can we get rid of them, because eventually it's going to pop out somewhere in the marriage, and half of, well, not quite half, but nearly half of all marriages end in divorce because these emotional issues have not been taken care of. That's really the root of the issue as far as divorce is concerned, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I learned a lot about this stuff way before I took the class because you know, as you were learning about it, you'd teach us about it.
Yep.
But then
there were times when I would hurt you guys and you'd say, Dad, you just gave me a father wound.
Yeah. Kind of using it to our advantage.
Yeah.
But as far as, like, I've only known Gina relatively recently compared to how long I've, been told this kind of stuff from you.
Right.
So it's new to her because I would tell her this kind of stuff, and I kind of, she was learning enough to be interested in taking the class, and since taking the class and getting married and stuff, we both agree that a lot of we don't have really, our arguments are limited because of it. Instead of having arguments, we have more of discussions because we can see the other person's wounds and where they're coming from, and we can have more of a soft spot and way more patience when it comes to that area of them, because we know that they're fragile in that area.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a perfect way to say it, Kyle. I wanted to talk to you about, we'll change the subject just a little bit there, because you and I, Kyle, let's talk a little bit more about our relationship. You being the oldest child and me being a brand new dad. Well, guess what? Brand new dads are kind of amateurs when it comes to the right things and the wrong things. What should a dad do and what should a dad not do? And I was the oldest of my 9 siblings. And so I think some of the immaturity as a parent can lead to a lot more, I don't know, maybe this is true, maybe a lot more abuse and neglect and wounding to the older siblings. Well, and I don't know if that's necessarily true, but there could be some truth to it in some situations.
It would make sense because, parents learn as time goes on and as you have more kids too. So if you're the brunt of all the, you're the brand new kid to a brand new marriage to brand new parents. Like, I mean, you get you're on the, what do you want to call it?
The receiving end.
You're the first one to go through. You have to plow the way for the rest of the siblings, and you got to take the brunt of a lot of the learning curve that your parents have.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you don't, like, what's nice about probably now you have this with Grandpa, but you probably didn't have discussions like we have with him.
Right. Something like this would never take place between me and my dad at your age, being me being your age. No.
Until you were already a dad.
Right.
And already had seen wounds that you've facilitated in us. But that's what's nice about us and taking the class beforehand, before having kids. Like, we're trying to catch this stuff before we have kids and try to minimize, because I know we're not going to be perfect still.
Right.
But at least we can recognize it and then hopefully fix it before it becomes more of a permanent thing.
Yep. And there's there are times when I think about, if there's some things that you disagree with us as our parenting, you've mentioned that a few times to us.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to help us out, but I'm thinking to myself, okay, you just wait till you're a parent and see how things go, pal.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate, Kyle, all these conversations that we have. Before you left the home to go out on your own and buy your own house and everything, there were times when I would just go to your bedroom before you go to sleep, and we could just chat about just life and deeper things, and you could talk to me about things that you see that I could improve upon. And even though I maybe didn't want to hear it at the time, I really appreciated you as I thought about, Kyle's right, some of those things you talked about, how I treat you or the relationship with me and Mom. And you just made a lot of good points. And that's one of your gifts, is to be able to understand the psychology behind people and the relationships. You really have a gift there, Kyle.
Yeah, I've always been interested in psychology and things like that, and being able to connect dots for people that don't quite have that insight that I've been given, I guess.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable to me, because then it gets them thinking, because I've done it with friends even now too. It gets them thinking, and hopefully it helps their lives too.
Yeah. So before you were married, about a year ago, you and I went on a hunting trip. And that's one of your deepest passions, is hunting. Tell us a little bit about hunting. How did you get started in all that, Kyle? Because that is this hunting trip that we went on. We had a lot of connections too, just the two of us. And we could talk a little bit about that. But tell us a little bit how you got started with hunting, because that's a lot of passion for a lot of guys.
Well, I kind of, I was given a BB gun by Uncle Tom.
Okay.
One Christmas,
it's Mom's brother. Yep.
Yeah. So I just started by shooting cans and stuff like that. But when we went to your parents, Grandma and Grandpa, they always had pesky sparrows flying around the farm.
Sure.
So the sparrows are bad because the swallows, barn swallows, build nests around the farm, and they are the ones that eat mosquitoes, and nobody likes mosquitoes.
Yep.
So, but
there's a few people that do.
I'm sure,
I'm just kidding.
Swallows.
Yeah.
But the sparrows are aggressive and mean, and they like to go into those nests because they're lazy, and they kick out the swallows.
Yeah.
And then the swallows don't have anywhere to lay an egg. And so, but I think you said you've noticed on the farm, because I only go there for a weekend when I was a kid, but you notice when you would go out and shoot a lot more sparrows, you could notice a definite decrease in.
There was, I remember. I remember when, as a kid, I was a teenager, and I shot a lot of sparrows. I actually used a .22 to shoot them, and I shot a couple dozen of sparrows that springtime. And sorry for all you animal lovers out there, but that's just the way it goes. But Kyle, you could probably talk on that subject, but
go out in the field, grab your quiver and your bow, and hunt game for me.
Yes,
that's in Genesis.
That is yes. So God gave us animals for eating and sometimes to eliminate for their peskiness.
Well, he put us in charge of nature's balance.
There you go.
So sometimes things get out of balance.
Yep. So anyway, I shot a lot of sparrows during that springtime, and the swallows, they were abundant that spring, and that summer, you could see dozens of swallows flying through the air, and we had very few mosquitoes that summer on the farm. It was a really good time, a good summer, and I'm grateful that it worked that way.
Well, yeah, this BB gun that I got was, I don't know, probably like a $20 or $30 BB gun back then.
Yeah.
So it wasn't very good at all. And between me and cousin Dustin, and I think Jared would kind of follow us around a little bit. It took, I want to say, a few years before we actually got a bird.
Really?
I don't know why we were so determined, but we ended up getting one. And then I did end up upgrading my pellet gun and just having an abundance of targets to shoot at. being the birds.
Yep.
It kind of started my love of hunting,
Mm-hmm.
but real hunting didn't start until probably I met a few friends that liked hunting in high school, and that's around then when I actually got my hunting license.
Yeah.
And then I kind of hunted. You don't really hunt much, so I'm a self-taught hunter for the most part, watching YouTube videos or discussing things with friends and stuff. But so I hunted a little bit, but then I didn't really start ramping up until I met some friends on deployment, and we were always talking about hunting. And like, when we get back, we're gonna do. I had so many of those discussions, like we're gonna go do this, when we get back. But most of those things didn't happen. But the one thing that did happen was a trip out west to Idaho.
Yeah, let's hear this trip.
Well, the first year, none of us ended up coming back with anything. But the next year, we went again, and I did end up.
And what state was this?
Idaho.
Yeah, okay. I can't remember if you mentioned
Oh
it.
yeah, I said that.
Okay, sorry. I wasn't listening as part of my father wounds. I don't listen to you. I neglect you.
Right,
Sorry,
you're always thinking about the next thing.
Yeah,
you want to say.
I'm always thinking about
instead of listening to
I'm
me.
thinking about myself.
Yeah,
yes,
I wonder
that's
how
okay.
mom feels.
Yeah.
So this is the year after that. So it would have been like 2022 probably or something like that.
Okay. Yep.
I ended up coming back with a nice 5x5 bull elk that I shot.
And I'm a construction guy, so I'm thinking a 5x5 sheet of plywood. But what does 5x5 mean?
Well, it just means 5 antlers on one side and 5 on the other.
Oh, okay.
And the end one was kind of splayed a little bit, so the next year probably would have been a 6x6. But
Okay.
he maybe not he wouldn't have lasted. Well, obviously somebody did get him.
Yep.
It was me. I'm
Yep.
glad it was me.
Yeah, but that elk was just gorgeous when we saw a picture of you with it. It's like that's the God's creation is just beautiful, and the fact that we are given the opportunity to be that close to nature, I think, is a great thing. I mean, you and I, Kyle, you've talked a lot about the humane part of being a hunter and all that you do to minimize that suffering, because a lot of things you talk about hunting is how animals can die by other predators. They can slowly die a starvation death, all that stuff. But in hunting, it can be actually quite humane in the way you do it. I don't know if you want to talk on that at all.
Well,
but
yeah, sure. People that oppose hunting think it's so brutal and stuff like that. And if you're an ethical hunter, the kill is actually the least enjoyable part, because you do feel bad for the animal. But I'll talk about the actual quality of the meat first.
Sure.
You can actually like you can go to Walmart and get your meat from there from a cow that's been ankle deep in its own feces for its whole life.
Yep.
Shoulder to shoulder with all the other cows. So who knows all the diseases that it's in. And if you ask me, that's pretty inhumane too.
Right.
And then they get brought to the slaughterhouse and they get to see 20 of their friends get their throats slit before it's their turn. So.
Right. What's going through their heads at that time?
Versus the meat of an elk up in the mountains lived its life 99.99% completely free of anything.
Yeah.
And don't go into the taxidermist. He said it's probably a 4 or 5 year old elk.
Mm-hmm.
And so that elk not only is free range, but it's also one of the healthiest animals probably on earth, because it's an animal that's probably pushing between 700 and 800 pounds.
Yep.
And to get all that mass up and down mountains running back and forth and stuff like that, it needs some good stamina and good muscles. So it's just great meat and good for you too.
Yeah. So tell us about why you're talking meat and your elk.
What do you mean?
I think you butchered it, or is that the proper term for butchering, or for taking the meat of an elk?
Yeah, just to bring it out from where we had killed it to the camp, we cut it up, we quartered it up, and we had.
Hold it, before you go there, Kyle. Though, let's hear the kill itself, because that's really interesting. Sorry if I interrupted there. I'm always thinking about myself, though.
Yeah, right. That's
an inner vow I made. I will always be most important.
Yeah. All right. Just look at you. You got the cameras
Yeah,
and the lights
yeah.
everywhere.
It should be like this, right? Okay.
Yeah. But but as far as the actual kill, like I said, the hunter doesn't. If you're an ethical hunter, you don't like that part of it. But if you're gonna be a hunter and have good, clean meat that you trust for the next year for your friends and family, and that's just how you have to do it. But I think there's several different ways that animals die outside of hunting in nature. They could either get eaten alive by wolves and bears or things like that. They can die of starvation, which is a very slow and painful death. They can die of freezing to death, and because I can't imagine that's very fast. Disease, which wouldn't be a very quick death.
Yep.
I feel like those are the main ones. I don't know if I'm missing any main ones. Or a hunter can come along, and if he's practiced enough with his bow or gun, and he discerns a good time to shoot, he can put the best shot on that animal that he can, and within 30 seconds that animal will die.
Yeah.
And the
Wow,
bull,
that perspective really
the-
changes things.
Yeah, the bull elk that I shot, it was 120 yards away, and it was with a gun, and he didn't go. He maybe went a half a yard.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before he dropped.
He
Wow.
he just hardly moved at all.
Yeah.
So, and then
he
was moving around a little bit on
A
the ground.
well-placed shot, it sounds like.
He was moving on the ground a little bit too, and I just shot till I didn't see any movement because I wanted to put him out of any sort of pain that he was feeling.
Yep.
As soon as I could. But yeah, that's that story.
That elk was saying, "You just gave me a hunter's wound."
Yeah.
But it was really interesting how you explained the story about didn't you have to have help from your friend to get the shot off?
So there was a total of 4 of us, and only 2 of us had tags. The other 2 guys were just there for fun, and the other guy with a tag went out with his father-in-law actually, and then the other guy came with me, and he's an Army sniper. And when we saw the elk, we saw him right away when he was at 120 yards. But we couldn't go closer. We couldn't go uphill towards him because there was sagebrush, which is really dry and brittle, and you'd be able to hear us coming.
Yep.
And then down below, we couldn't go that way either because there was shale, which is just a bunch of just chips off of rocks, just small rocks like that big.
Sure.
That would just slide down the hill, and you could hear us that way too, and that he would have been able to smell us that way too. But I couldn't lean up on the rock that was in front of me. There was kind of a bigger rock in front of me because there was just enough of a hill to where I couldn't see him when I got down on the rock.
Yep.
And this is I was borrowing my other buddy's rifle, and it's a 14-pound rifle, and you don't want.
Is that heavy or?
Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
Oh, okay.
And you don't want to be holding that because it's pretty shaky, and you want to, like I said, you want to put the best shot as you can. So what my sniper buddy that's with me suggested was using what he called alternative shooting positions.
Okay.
That you use with a buddy. And what he said he would do was get down on his hands, put his hands down on the rock, and then he said I could use his back as my gun rest.
Wow.
And so he was nice enough for me to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to put a shot on that elk, and I shot that elk off of his back.
Wow. And you do that type of thing so you can hold that gun still.
Yeah.
And that's how you nailed that shot. Yeah, that's awesome that he would do that. And I would imagine his ears were ringing for a little bit after that shot went off.
Well, he was so excited too, as was I, that he forgot to put his ear protection in.
Oh.
I don't know if you and like I alluded to before, I put 3 shots into that elk.
Yeah, oh boy.
And I didn't realize he didn't have his ear pro in, so
yeah.
I had the barrel almost like right around his head.
Oh man.
And he was very hard of hearing for the next few days after.
Oh yeah, wow. But he was excited for you,
Yeah,
Kyle.
he said
You
he
were
wouldn't trade it for anything.
well.
so.
I mean, this was one of the. I think this was the very first animal, the big animal that you ever got. Right?
Yeah, that was before I even. Well, I got a little doe, in late September or October that year, which was my first deer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was the first major thing that I ever got.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. So that was exciting, and the is it antlers? What? Okay. Great.
They're not horns, so yes,
Yeah.
they're antlers.
Okay. All right. So,
The difference between antlers and horns is antlers fall off every year. Horns are permanent.
okay. So that would explain why we had to cut the horns off of our cows
Yeah.
back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I thought it was always so strange that cows have horns. I thought only bulls have horns, but cows, the female, also has horns. But back to your story, Kyle. You were so excited. You were sending me and Mom pictures about the hunt, and we were really excited for you because we knew how excited you would be, because this is kind of a lifelong dream. Head out to Idaho and get this huge elk, and then all of the meat that you have now because of the elk, the butchering of the elk.
Yeah, we still eat elk meat. We've been eating it. We still have a decent amount yet.
Yeah.
And we still gave a lot of it away to those hunting buddies and other friends, my neighbors and friends that come over sometimes.
Yep.
It's just good meat.
Right. So you've got the elk, and then you and I went on a trip a couple months before you got married. So right now we are recording January of 2024, and your elk shot, that was what month and what year, Kyle, then?
November 2nd.
What time?
About 1:30 p.m.
Okay.
Because I remember that because it was about 12 hours later that we finally got to sleep.
Okay.
Because between us 4 guys, we took 3 of us took 2 trips, so that's 6 trips, and the one guy stayed behind. So no
as in
wolves got
trips,
to
like as in
back to camp with the meat.
the meat after you cut it into quarters or however you.
Well, just cut it up into manageable sizes.
Yeah,
because
because you were saying like 700, 800 pounds or whatever. That's a lot of.
And then, that's total weight.
Yeah,
but
right.
About
True.
probably 200 or 300 pounds of meat.
Yeah.
So, and then the one guy took 1 trip. So that's 7 total trips to get
Wow.
everything back.
Yeah. So then you and I went on this trip. Like I said, about a year ago, we went up to northern Michigan.
It was late March, I think.
Yeah, March of 2023. And what'd you nail there?
That was a high fence operation there, where they had a bunch of hogs and rams running around. Well, they also had some other things too.
They had buffalo
and other Highland cows and things like that.
So the high fence thing you mentioned, it's I don't know what you call that type of hunting, but easy hunting. I don't know what you call it.
Well, they only had about 65 acres to run around on, and a lot of people look down upon that. So it's definitely not it's not the same difficulty as getting that elk. But I looked at it more as it was still a hunt where you had to go out and shoot your animal and butcher your own meat. But I look at it as grocery shopping with a gun versus hunting.
Yeah. So I remember when I was out there with Kyle, and we, it was cold. There was still snow on the ground, and on the 65 acres, we were looking for that hog, that wild / semi-wild hog that we wanted you to nail to kill on this hunt. And there was some woods there. We figured they were in the back, so we kind of went around the perimeter on the left side, and I'm following you with my gun and your gun in your hand, follow in front, and I'm crunching on the snow, and you yell at me, and I received a sun wound at that time because I didn't know what I was doing wrong. But Kyle said, "Stop making all that noise with it," and I'm like, "What am I supposed to do?" There's still.
Gina will do say the same thing to me because we'll be out at a like a state park or something like that, and
Yeah.
she'll be just crunching on the leaves, not even caring about. I'm like, do you even want to see any deer? She's like, I wasn't even thinking about deer.
Yeah.
But there is definitely like a way to walk. There's a skill to walking
Sure.
without as much sound as you.
Yeah. So there's a podcast you could do, a course you could set up, Kyle, for how
It's
to
more of
walk
a-
properly
It's
when
more
hunting.
of a feeling when you're out there that you just learn.
Yeah. Yep. But you got a big hog. Anything you want to talk about that hunt and how that happened?
I don't know. There's not really much to
Yeah,
it. You just go out. Like I said, it was grocery shopping with a
Yeah.
gun.
You saw the hog. It stared at you for a while, for a few seconds,
That
and
made for a cool picture.
it did, because I took a picture of Kyle right behind Kyle, and then the hog in the background. And we'll have to show that. Maybe we'll be able to put that on the podcast here. But that hog looked like it was about to charge.
I was deep down hoping that it would have, because that would have been a really cool video.
That would have been, you would have been dead, and I would have been, had to drive home myself. But no, just
It
kidding.
would have been a cool story.
It would, yeah, it would have been cool. But this is how my son died. Let me tell you.
That's the way he wanted to go.
Yeah. So, and then not only did you get the wild boar, but you, I guess, semi-wild boar, is that? Okay.
It looks like a wild boar where
Yeah.
it's got the black like fur and stuff like that.
Sure.
But it's I mean, it can roam around, but they put hay and stuff out there for it to eat,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
corn and things like
So
that.
they're pretty tenderly taken care of by the owners there. But you also got a ram too.
Right. Yeah, we figured might as well make the most of the trip.
Yeah.
And they had a 2-for-1, or not really 2-for-1 deal, but buy one get one like half off,
Discounted or
yeah,
something.
very
Yeah.
discounted.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I ended up, because what is it, like a 3-hour drive up there,
Yeah, something like that.
and we stayed overnight. So we figured might as well make the most of it. So I ended up getting a ram too.
Yeah.
And that, I still have the meat from that, but we haven't tried any of that too.
Okay.
I'm a little worried about how ram meat would taste, but
Sure.
maybe we could make gyros out of it. Actually.
There you go. Yeah, man. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, but for our listeners out there, guys, isn't it a great relationship that my son Kyle and I have? And it really has a lot to do with realizing, as a father, realizing that the relationship with my children, there was something missing, there was something wrong, there was something not right, and through the grace of God, somehow I was led down the path of this fatherhood thing, where how can I do better with giving my kids wounds? And back then, I didn't even, as an early dad,
How
I
can
didn't.
you help with giving them wounds?
Yeah,
Or
that's right. Yeah,
minimizing.
yeah.
them?
Minimizing is what you want to do, but I'm really good at giving wounds. I'll tell you that much.
I'll tell you that too.
But the relationship Kyle and I have, it's just great, because there's so many people I meet who just say, I did not have a great relationship with my father, and I still don't have a great relationship or a good relationship or any relationship with my dad. So when I was told about the wounds through a book called Wild at Heart by John Eldredge, that book just opened my eyes, because it talked about the father wound, a term I had never heard before. And then in 2010, Kyle, as you know, I went down to a retreat that a requirement to go there was to read this book. And I went down there, and there was 125 guys there that also had some difficult relationships with their dad. This retreat was led by Dr. Bob Schutz, who's who wrote the foreword to my book. And it was a life-changing event for me, because I received some incredibly deep healing from my emotional wounds from my dad, and I offered forgiveness to my dad. And this was all done through excuse me. This was all done through inner healing prayer with a Catholic gentleman who walked me through this process, and it was life-changing. Not only for my relationship with you and your brothers, but also for my wife and for other people. Just like you mentioned earlier about you can start to have more empathy for other people, because you know that they're suffering with their own wounds. And if we could get to a point in our world where we can realize that we have wounds, there is a way that God wants us to heal, that Jesus wants to heal us, He offers the Holy Spirit for that healing, that we can change the world if we realize this, if we become aware of it. That's step one. But then to move forward and look for ways to receive healing. There's several ways you can do that. It's not just through, someone counseling you as a prayer minister, but there's other ways. And my book talks about that. So get my book, get The Father Wound and Beyond, so that you can talk about these situations before your relationships dissolve, and maybe it's a point of no return, because you never get to the point where you can reestablish a relationship. As a father, if you've hurt your children so deeply, how can you reestablish? Well, work on yourself first. How can I overcome these wounds, and then how can you reestablish those relationships with your children? Thoughts, Kyle?
Well, I was just going to ask, out of all the traits, I have my own answer, but out of all the traits you could have moving forward with healing your own wounds and the wounds or helping work through your relationship with other people, what would be the most important trait to have when you go into this kind of stuff? What do you think?
In order to be healed, I think is what you're saying?
Be healed or help other people, like talk through the wounding that you've caused them or things like that.
Okay, I think I know what your answer might be, but I know what my answer is, and that is to be vulnerable.
Well, it's very similar, but like within the last couple of years, taking these classes and talking with Gina and you and stuff, humility has never been way more important to me. And like humility, I always thought of it as like, oh no, like, you don't have to compliment me kind of thing, but it's way more than that. Like being able to like take criticism without fighting back. Like that's a huge one for me, is like, maybe there's some actual, you don't have to like, your pride gets in the way of your own progress sometimes when somebody's trying to give you some constructive criticism.
Yeah. Right. So, hey, I recognize that you might be wounded in this area here, and you're like, no, I'm just fine.
Well, a lot of times they're a lot more abrasive than that when they're coming at you like that. But even that, just being able to hear them out, because I know like if I was to have like a brother that wouldn't talk to me because of how much I wounded them, like just being able to say like, hey, I know you are extremely frustrated with how I treated you, or like you just hate me. Why is that?
Sure.
And no matter how rational or irrational their response is, it's good to be able to just sit there and take that sometimes.
Yeah, good point.
And just hear them out, so they can, because a lot of times they have to filter out all that stuff that they've just built up, all that frustration and anger, before they can actually hear your point of view, and or just to say, or for you to say like, you know what, you're right.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Right.
So there's way more to humility than I ever thought there was.
Yeah. So as you can see, folks, I told you this guy knows what he's talking about. I mean, this psychological, and he understands the human heart, I think. Kyle, you really have a gift there. And when we, when you were talking about humility, I'm thinking about vulnerable and vulnerability, that they are very similar terms, because to be vulnerable means to basically be humble enough to open your heart in order that these wounds can be released, that you can offer love, you can offer forgiveness for those who have hurt you, and you can accept things like criticisms, or that's not the exact word I want to use, but someone who's trying to help you, or someone who's saying, listen, you hurt me. But to be open, to be vulnerable, to being hurt, to hear that stuff.
Especially as guys, too.
Yeah. As guys, we just don't want to go there. But you don't understand, most of us as guys don't understand the freedom that can take place if you allow yourself to open up your heart. Because when we're wounded, Kyle, as you probably know, part of our hearts have stopped loving. And our hearts were meant to love, and our hearts were meant to receive love. And when our hearts have closed off to those two things, the giving and receiving, it's very difficult to establish relationships. So to be vulnerable to me means to open up your heart, to allow healing to take place, and to give love and receive love. Instead of those barriers, those identity lies, those judgments, the inner vows that we make that close our hearts off to the world, and unforgiveness, resentment, bitterness that we hold onto our hearts because we don't want to reconcile or make things better. And so we live a life of desperation instead of a life of freedom. Open up your hearts and understand the freedom that comes with allowing yourself to live with all of your heart instead of that heart being closed and you never fulfilling the great plans that God has for your life and the love that you're meant to spread onto the world. Kyle?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay. I don't know what I could add to that.
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
Yeah, great. Well, Kyle, we're kind of getting near the end here of this awesome video. You are a son who makes me incredibly proud. I'm so glad you were born. I'm glad you're my son. You've heard me say that in the past, but I really mean it, Kyle. And what a blessing it is to have you as my son, and blessing to have you on this podcast. And I hope we've helped others to see some of the great things that can happen in the father-son relationship.
Well, I wouldn't have wanted to been wounded by anybody else.
Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment, Kyle.
But it's not necessarily like we don't have the perfect relationship now yet either. But it was just a month or two ago that we went through another big step with healing too. And so it's always still developing for us.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about that at all, Kyle?
I could. You just mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, that's maybe that's another podcast.
I think that's another podcast. But yes, you and I, one-on-one, we did inner healing. I kind of led you through it. And we got through a lot of good stuff that had to get out in the open. And I think it was a good healing experience for you, Kyle.
And it took, I guess, vulnerability on both of our parts because I had to actually admit things that were bothering me and come to him in a way that wasn't just so like critical. And because a lot of people take the lazy way out and just, yell at people or don't speak at all when you've moved out, in my case.
Sure.
But then it took obviously vulnerability on your part to hear me out too.
Yeah.
So that's where, like, a lot of times it's just a lack of humility that keeps us from being more of who we're meant to be.
Right. Yep.
And like you said, it like after that and a few other sessions through class too, like my life has been way better recently, just more freeing. And I feel like a lot of the bitter fruits that I was experiencing have gone away, which really caused a lot of frustration in my life.
Yeah. That's awesome to hear, Kyle. I'm really glad that worked out. So, Kyle, back when you were a kid, you had a shirt that said, "I get my muscles from my dad." Do you remember that?
Yeah, I've ripped that shirt from flexing since then.
Let's see if that's true. Let's see if that's true here. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Holy cow, those arms are like exact duplicates of each other, except yours way bigger.
Yeah, if you clicked mine and kind of zoomed in.
If you put a tape measure on, you're probably like 14 inches around diameter, and mine is like 7.5. But anyway, Kyle, you're a great son. I love you.
Thanks.
And it's an honor to be your dad. And all you guys out there, God bless you all. And let's work on that father-son relationship and all of the relationships we have with all of our children and our spouses. And let's make this place a better world for everyone. God bless you all. And St. Joseph, patron of fathers and families, pray for us.
Pray for us.
All right, see you guys. And go Packers. Woo!